Rhya is one of the best PvE characters in Black Clover Mobile, but to make him the best, you're going to need the correct gear and stats. So considering Rhya is a green DPS character, we're going to want him to be able to do as much damage as we possibly can with him, so the Ominous gear set is going to be perfect fit for him, giving us that 7% increase in attack and magic attack as well. And then we'll be equipping the Ominous Whip alongside the Ominous Crystal to then give him that 2-set bonus of the 7% attack and magic attack. Then the next gear set we're going to be going for is going to be Secret of the Deep Sea, as this gear set is going to allow him to be quicker, so he's going to be faster than hopefully other DPSs in Arena. As the 2-set bonus of this set is going to grant the wearer a 5% increased speed buff for 2 turns at the start of a wave, which is going to be really handy in making him really quick. And then we're going to be going for Conjure of the Deep Sea alongside Essence of the Deep Sea, so then we can get the right main stats. So those two are the most important gear sets, but there's other gear sets like the Noble's Inheritance with the Noble's Robe and the Noble's Orb, which can give him a 5% crit rate bonus, is also good. Or if you're already critting enough, then Resolute Judge is also going to be a perfect set, as it gives you 7% crit damage with the Judge's Crossbow as well as the Judge's Seal. Then this is a very niche, maybe usable set on Rhya, as the Hunters or the Ancient Hunter set could actually be relatively useful for him, only if you have his skill page. But for this gear set, we're going to be going for the Hunter's Bow and then the Hunter's Boots to then give us that extra 10 accuracy, but I wouldn't necessarily recommend this too much. But if you want to use it with his skill page, then I guess you can, but I wouldn't really necessarily recommend it over the crit damage or crit rate gears. So speaking of this skill page, we have Insincere Man. Now this is going to be his probably best in slot skill page, as it's going to buff his skill 2 to not only copy 2 buffs of an enemy, but to then remove 2 buffs from an enemy as well. As this is basically Rhya's whole kit, is stealing and using your enemy's buffs against them. And I mentioned the accuracy gear set before, as the passive of this skill will grant a 30% increased accuracy buff for 1 turn upon having 3 or more active buffs at the start of a turn, so you can actually make use of his accuracy stats by using this skill page. Condemning Light is also a fantastic skill page, as it's going to increase his attack and crit rate as well, so this is going to be a perfect fit for him, especially if you're running crit damage gear. Then you can also get some extra crit rate and also attack stats from this skill page. And some other fantastic ones are going to be Respectable Rival. You've got Lion Spirit, which is also another fantastic one. And then of course the Captain's Dignity is going to be fantastic for him, so he can get some extra crit rate. And then Chief's Appearance as well is another fantastic one, alongside Sea Serpent Sprites for that extra crit rate, and then Breath of Darkness for the all attack buff, and then Mysterious Ancient Book when it's fully starred out to give yourself a 12% damage increase. So next up is talents, and all of his attack talents pretty much similar to any other DPS, as his regular attack stat is much higher than his actual magic attack stat. So to make him even stronger, we're going to go for the increased attack talent of 7%, which are going to cost these materials right here, and then we're going to be then pairing it up with Sharp Mind, so then we can get some extra damage dealt. Or if you wanted, you could then pair it up with Battle Frenzy to get some extra crit rate. Defense talents are going to be increased defense of 20%, and then the endurance one to give you even more defense and crit resistance at the start of every wave, which will then stack up to 5 times. And then these will cost all of these materials right here. So like I said before, if you're actually running Rhya with his skill page, then you can actually afford to go for the increased accuracy and penetration, as this is going to help you do even more damage and help ignore all of your enemy's defensive stats. So then you're basically left with 2 choices. It's either Resolution or it's Mage's Blessing. So I think Mage's Blessing is going to be more useful, as having that 20% chance to then help yourself steal and copy even more buffs is going to be really good. But if you're not using a skill page, then as always, the Swiftness talent alongside the increased damage resistance will also be completely fine. Then next up we have team comps, and if you watched my Licht guide video, you would know that I would already given a team comp with Licht and Rhya in it, so let's go for something different today. As the team comp before in the Licht video would have been Licht, Rhya, Rades, and then either Valtos or Sally, so that's already there, right there. If you want to use that team, that's always perfectly fine. But what if we actually want to use Rhya as our only DPS? So Rhya's main stats are to do with his regular attack stat instead of magic attacks, so we're going to want someone to help buff that stat. So to do this, William Vengeance is going to be probably his best support for Rhya, as all of his buffs are fantastic. As the more buffs the merrier for Rhya, as Pulse of the Magic Tree is going to give a 84% increase in regular attack and then a 65% increase in speed. And then it will then also have a 60% chance to grant an ally with a 10% increased mobility buff when the mobility is equal to 50% or lower. And then Magic Tree's Descent is then also fantastic, as it will give 2 more buffs, which are going to be the Fortify buff of level 3, which will basically give him a 34% damage reduction. And this is actually a lot higher than you might think. This is going to save you a lot of HP. And then the counterattack is also going to be fantastic as well, as it will help Rhya do even more damage. So then from then on, you can pretty much do any other 2 combination or like 2 character combination that you possibly want. So as always, Lotus is a fantastic character for literally anyone to use to reduce your ally or your enemy's speed, which is going to be fantastic, whilst also helping enabling your other DPS characters. And then of course, when ran alongside Mars, he can then with their united attack, you can then guarantee a bunch of speed reductions on your enemy enemy teams with also things like stuns, taunting, and a bunch of other stuff. So now the reason why this team works is going to be because of this whole kit. As his skill 1, Copy Dark Magic, Continuous Slash is going to be an AoE skill 1, so just like Rhyami's skill 1, but instead of inflicting bleed upon critting, this skill instead will basically say if Rhya has a buff on himself, he will then perform an extra attack dealing damage equal to 30% of his own attack and magic attack on the enemy, and then every skill level up upgrade will give you 3% in attack and magic attack. And then his skill 2 is going to be Copy Dark Magic Wind Slash. This is going to be a single target skill 2, just like Rhyami's again, and then this is going to, instead of actually stunning or having more crit damage, it will then instead copy 2 of an enemy's buffs, and then he'll be able to use them. And then this has damage ratios of 105% of his attack and magic attack, with it increasing by 8% for both of those with each level. So then this will then allow him to proc his skill 1, as being able to copy buffs will then allow him to actually have buffs, to then actually use his extra attack with Continuous Slash. And the fact that it actually copies 2 buffs, it makes it a great piece of synergy with his Copy Dark Magic, Dark Cloaked, Lightless Slash, as this is going to be a single target special skill or ultimate with damage ratios of 150% of attack and magic attack. And the reason why this works, the skill 2 works so well with this special skill, is basically whenever Rhya has 2 or more active buffs on himself, Rhya will then perform another extra attack on an enemy, dealing 70% of his attack and magic attack as extra damage. And then he'll also, on top of that, will then get a 15% increased damage dealt buff for each active buff that he has currently on him, which makes this skill do a load of damage. And I'm not even kidding, this skill hits like a truck. It's so powerful, and it's going to be so useful in killing not only bosses, but literally one-shotting a bunch of characters in Arena. And then, of course, I always have to mention the United attack with him and Licht, as it's just so good, as Rhya's half of the United attack is going to be just AoE damage with 55% of attack and magic attack, and then what he'll do is he'll attack after copying 1 buff off of his partnered mage, which will be Licht, and then he will then grant him and Licht a all attack level 2 buff. And then, of course, we also have to mention Licht's half of the United attack, and pretty much this is the exact same thing as Rhya's, same damage, same upgrade effects, I'm pretty sure anyways, and then also will deal AoE damage because it's a United attack, but instead of applying the all attack buff, it will then give Licht and also Rhya a defense penetration level 2 buff, which will then help them ignore 20% of the enemy's defense. Then on to Rhya's passives, which are nothing like too crazy interesting. Basically, whenever on his unique passive, whenever a buff expires, he'll then recover 15% of his max HP, and then in his enhanced passive will grant himself a 2.5% increased attack buff whenever a buff expires, which will then stack up to 3 times, although I believe this is a hidden buff and isn't actually visible, so I don't think this will actually benefit his actual kit in any way apart from the attack increase. So then that brings me on to what skills should you actually prioritize in terms of leveling up. So if you're running a team composition with Licht, then the United attack is going to be a 100% must do first, as this is going to be your main source of damage. Then I'd probably say it's got to be his ultimate after that, especially if you're not using the United attack, as this ultimate hits so hard and is going to be so good in terms of how much damage you're going to be able to do. Then I'd probably say to level up his skill 1 then after that, as the extra attack is also fantastic on that, and not only that, it's also his only form of AoE damage outside of his United attack, so it'll be really useful if you can get that up. And then I think his skill 2 is probably the one that you need to level up the least, as basically all its job is to copy enemy buffs and also remove enemy buffs if you have a skill page, obviously, so increasing its damage isn't going to necessarily increase its usefulness so much, as its only job is to basically get Rhya some buffs, so then he can use his skill 1 and then his special skill to then do the damage. So there you have it. That is a complete guide to Rhya and how to build him, the best team comps, talents, skill pages, etc. So if you like this video, make sure you like and subscribe, as it helps a ton and it's free, and I will see you in the next video. Peace!